Please be seated. I want to welcome everybody this morning to the senior thesis presentation of Levi Lacy. Levi has been my senior assistant this year in geometry, and he's done a great job in there. We've made a lot of memories and had a good time. You guys who decided to come today are in for a treat. He has a lot of thought-provoking things to say, and there will be some entertaining, well, I guess you'll see as he goes. So this will be informative and entertaining. Let me open in prayer, and then I'll hand it over to him. Thank you, Lord Jesus, for this day and a chance for Levi to express who he is and what you placed on his heart. I pray just for your guidance in these 45 minutes together, that you will be pleased, that we will be challenged, and that you will speak through Levi. We love you. In Christ's name, amen.
In late 2022, OpenAI released this chatbot, ChatGPT. The artificial assistant quickly became popular, and me and many of my friends booted up our laptops to try it for ourselves. We were also surprised by the quick and informative nature of the AI, but pretty soon, the tutors found out. In some classes, we were told if we could use it, others we couldn't. In some classes, we weren't told at all. As students, we were left with a very large gray area if we should or shouldn't be using the assistant. AI's rapid arrival raises many concerns, but if there's anything I've learned from MCA, it's that first, I need to define my terms. Artificial intelligence is simply any device that recreates an intelligent thought or action, but artificially. There are three types of AI that are recognized today. The type that reenacts an intelligent thought, the type that reenacts an intelligent movement, and the type that incorporates both of these. The most common type and the most relevant one that we see today is the type that reenacts an intelligent mental state or thought process. This is the one that I'm going to be focusing on. Common versions of these would be like Siri, Alexa, and the most relevant, ChatGPT. These technologies are given information from a keyboard, sight, or sound, and with that information give out their best in response. These devices are simple enough to be used by anybody and are the most common type of AI we see today. I believe AI will create more harm than it will good, at least in some places, such as education. However, while researching my thesis, I couldn't help but find many pros to using AI. Artificial intelligence can help students with biblical knowledge. I know that statements can make a lot of people feel uncomfortable, but bear with me. ChatGPT has been made to be an unbiased assistant. It can give you answers that are compelling and usually biblically accurate. I'm not saying that ChatGPT is the perfect assistant. It will still make mistakes and give you answers that you don't necessarily need, but so will a pastor. It is still our job to read the Bible and differentiate what we think is biblically accurate or not. If a student has deep and difficult questions about their faith or the Bible, ChatGPT can usually compile an answer that will lead them in the direction they need to be. For example, I asked some friends what questions they had about their faith or the Bible. One of the questions I received was, do we always have free will, or does God push us to do actions in his plan? If I put this prompt into ChatGPT, it's going to give us a very long answer. And since we have the attention span of a grape, and we don't have all day, I'm going to go ahead and make it in less than 120 words. Now this is going to give us a pretty good answer, but it's not quite from the worldview that we want it. It's going to give us multiple religions and multiple different worldviews. So I'll go ahead and make it from a Christian's perspective. Now this is going to give us a really good answer from the worldview that we want. But there's only one thing that we need more, is that we want to know where it's getting its sources from. So I'll go ahead and ask it to quote verses from the NIV. And I'll read this to y'all. In Christian belief, free will and divine guidance coexist. Humans are seen as having free will, capable of making their own choices. But God also has a plan and can influence events. The Bible suggests that while God has sovereign control, he allows humans to choose their actions. For instance, Philippians 2:13 states, "For it is God who works in you and will act in order to fulfill his good purpose." This implies that God influences human will and actions towards his purpose. Yet the presence of choices like those discussed in Deuteronomy 30:19. "This day I call the heavens and the earth as witnesses against you, that I have set before you life and death, blessings and curses. Now choose life so that you and your children may live," affirms the concepts of free will. This answer uses a very similar strategy to many pastors today. It didn't necessarily tell me what I had to believe, but instead gave me support from both sides. So now through thought, meditation, and prayer, I can decipher an answer that I think is correct on my own. However, for this to work, the student has to have the right thought process going into it. They have to want it from a Christian's perspective and with Bible verses. A student can do the exact same thing, but ask for why this disproves all-powerful God, and it would give them an answer that is just as compelling. For my thesis, I read John Lennox's 2084, and he explains a problem just like this. It says, superintelligence should only be developed in the service of widely shared ethical ideals, and for the benefit of all humanity rather than one state or organization. At this time, ChatGPT has a very vague moral compass. You can get it to argue for multiple ethical issues. This is probably to avoid backlash from different groups of people. ChatGPT and other AIs like it will make it easy for corrupt people to gather misinformation when lecturing others. In many places around the world, we'll start to see the use of AI to spread misinformation and feed into many people's delusions. Philippians 4:8 says, "Finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent and praiseworthy, think about such things." When given any information from AI or not, we need to understand if it's true, noble, right, pure, lovely, admirable, excellent, and praiseworthy. Then we can decipher the information we are given the way that God intends it. For my thesis, I interviewed Lewis Matthews. He's the CEO of Angel Protection and Project Gemini. Both companies heavily use AI systems. Project Gemini creates better and more efficient work than can be done by a human in the form of thousands of calculations a second. And Angel Protection is a security software that uses cameras and artificial recognition to detect possible threats on campuses, alert the police, and keep the police updated of their location. I had the opportunity to talk to them about these systems, and this is stuff that will save lives. However, knowing that we are fallen and sinful, people will surely create devices that can harm others and will be evil. We cannot fail to see that AI will do incredible things that can make jobs much more efficient and save lives. In geometry class at MCA, we go through Euclid's propositions. In this class, you get assigned a certain proposition. In the next class, you'll have a dice rolled. If the dice lands in your number, you'll hear the roar of your walk-up song, followed by a gut-wrenching feeling. In order for the student to succeed in a proposition, they must study what Euclid is saying. They have to open up the book and read it and teach themselves how to think through the proposition. Albert Einstein once said, "If a person masters the fundamentals of his subject, and has learned to think and work independently, he will surely find his way, and besides will be better able to adapt himself to progress and changes than the person whose training principally consists in acquiring the detailed knowledge." I could ask ChatGPT to do book 1, proposition 42 for me, and it would do it in seconds, and the student can memorize it in minutes. We don't just go to school to learn information, though. We go to school to teach ourselves how to think. If we can think through things, we learn how to better adapt to progress. While AI might help a student learn something quicker, more efficiently, and more reliably, it neglects skills that are essential for a student's flourishing. Students who study the book gain a strong work ethic and genuine understanding of the subject. When a student completes all his work using AI like ChatGPT, it removes most of the point of taking the class. Students who rely on AI won't bring themselves the point of education. It will teach them to learn facts rather than how to think. With AI, we have the power to complete any worksheet, thesis paper, math homework, book analysis, or speech in seconds. All the information of our high school careers is at our fingertips, but the struggle, ethics, and relationship are completely disregarded. Most of what we gain in education is lost. Skills that are essential for human flourishing, gone. AI like ChatGPT could be beneficial to students, but history has taught us people are fallen and sinful. Many students will use it to check off a box rather than learn. It will likely be detrimental to our educational system. However, I don't think the solution to our problem is just to ignore AI or not use it at all. Artificial intelligence is part of our future and will likely be unavoidable. It'd be unfair of me to suggest to you not to use it, because in 5 to 10 years you'd likely be considered a boomer. It will be difficult, maybe even possible to not use it, because it's already so prominent in our lives. I believe we need to train ourselves how to use it. But I'm not quite sure how this is going to work, but I know it's going to be different for everybody. For example, I'm a very big procrastinator. I struggle with not having the motivation to do things until the very last minute. Now, instead of maybe doing my research paper the night before, I might get AI like ChatGPT to do it for me the day of. However, not only is this dishonest, it's also just feeding a bad habit. When using AI, I need to keep myself in check and make sure I'm not using it just to procrastinate even more. Romans 12:2 says, "Do not conform to the patterns of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you'll be able to test and approve what God's will is, his good, pleasing, and perfect will." Oftentimes, the ways of the world are to steal, kill, and destroy. When using AI, we need to look at our heart and our own weaknesses. We must test within ourselves to see if what we're doing is being harmful to ourselves or others. If we use processes like this, artificial intelligence could be a great tool for students. In conclusion, King Solomon explained to us what his purpose in writing the Proverbs was. Proverbs 1:2-7 says, "For gaining wisdom and instruction, for understanding words of insight, for receiving instruction in prudent behavior, doing what is right and just and fair, for giving prudence to those who are simple, knowledge and discretion to the young. Let the wise listen and add to their learning. And let the discerning get guidance for understanding proverbs and parables, the sayings and the riddles of the wise. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge, but fools despise wisdom and instruction." This passage tells us what it means to be a worker, educator, and student. As Christians, we are told if we fear the Lord and his commandments, we can use artificial intelligence to do great things. If we do what is right and just and fair, however, in a fallen world, we are fools. We despise wisdom, instruction, and knowledge. We don't do what is right and just and fair. People use AI to fuel their sinful ways and to create devices that will harm others. I believe the instantaneous and untraceable nature of AI will be harmful to workers, educators, and students. Thank you.
Awesome job, Levi.
Thank you.
How's it feel to be done with that portion?
Much better now. Yeah, I'm much more excited for the questioning than I was for the speech.
Okay. Good. I'm equally nervous about both because this could go a lot of ways here. Okay, so we'll start with kind of I think we usually start with a key question, but I'm going to pick a different one. I think everybody wants to know how much of your thesis was actually written by AI.
Pretty much the whole time that I was writing my thesis and my speech, I did have a tab open with ChatGPT. I didn't directly copy and paste over that much, but I believe it was my title was made by AI, and I think there was a sentence in there that was said. Yeah. It probably wouldn't have addressed a lot of the problems in the same way that I did. Let me think. Yeah, I mean, I address them kind of with, you give a story and you kind of explain, how we've used it and how there could be certain problems that come along with that. But ChatGPT would usually just kind of explain a problem. It won't give, like a personal aspect to it. Sure. Okay.
What are your plans for next year? Let's do that.
Okay. So I'm going to be attending the Texas A&M Engineering Academy at Midland College, and then I'll transfer to main campus in College Station after a year. So.
All right. Do you know past that what you'd like to do?
So I'd like to major in mechanical engineering and hopefully go into automotive engineering and design with that.
So how do you think your kind of processing of this topic will benefit you kind of in your future pursuits?
So in college, I know there's probably a heavy use of AI right now, and knowing how to use it and how to use it beneficial to myself rather than just set myself behind and just do it to check off a box can be something that's very beneficial, because AI is an excellent tool. You can use it to do things much more efficiently and much more quickly than a lot of different people, and it can really, really help with studies and things like that if you know how to use it correctly and go into it with the right mindset.
Yeah. I think this may be a related question, but how'd you choose this topic of all the topics? Why did you zoom in on this?
Well, I thought it was really cool, first of all, but I also noticed that there's probably a lot of problems that come with, this new tool and this new thing. So I thought that it'd be good and fun and really beneficial to myself, even just to address the problems and understand how to use it.
I figure the chatbot gave you multiple suggestions for a title. Why'd you pick this particular one? Actually, read the whole title because I guess it's on the slide. But do you remember what you picked?
Yep. It's Ethically Artificial, Navigating AI's Moral Maze.
Okay, so kind of elaborate on that, and how'd you pick that?
So I really, I actually asked it for a list of titles, and it gave me like the first prompt, which was like Ethically Artificial, and then it gave me a bunch of other words behind that. So I kind of combined two of them that I liked the most. And Ethically Artificial, which by that I'm trying to explain that I was trying to dive into the ethics of using artificial intelligence and stuff like that to, work on things. And then navigating AI's moral maze. There's a lot of stuff that goes into, the morality of using AI and stuff like that. So I thought that was really good at just encompassing my idea.
So why is it that ethics comes up when we're just talking about ones and zeros? Like, it seems like computers are pretty black and white. So why are ethics an important element of kind of sorting through what AI is bringing to the surface?
Well, ultimately, it's a tool, and I think any tool has ethics to it. Just like a hammer, you can use it to do great things, or you can use it to, do bad things. And I think that artificial intelligence is very similar to that. But it's a lot more advanced. There's a lot of different things you can use it for, and that just dives into a big field of ethics, and that there's a lot of good things that can happen from it. There's a lot of bad things that can happen from it. So, does that answer your question?
Yeah, that's good. I mean, kind of, these are all like really hard things to grasp. Do you think ChatGPT, large language models like this, ever have the hope to be ethical on their own?
I think some do.
Okay.
Right now we see, I focus mostly on ChatGPT for this. I didn't use a whole ton of other AIs just because if I did, there would be so much more stuff that went into it. And a big problem that arose when I was making this is that throughout me making my paper and my speech and stuff like that, is there's so many new AIs that are just coming out, and all of them have different skills and are different, have different worldviews and stuff like that. So I'm sure that we're going to see AIs that come out with just a Christian worldview, and we're going to see things that are great like that. However, we're going to be seeing other AIs that don't have a Christian view and have more of a worldly view, stuff like that. So,
and I hadn't really thought about that, like God GPT kind of thing. That's kind of unsettling to think about. Okay, that's good. So let's talk a little bit about what you put up on the screen as a preview. Tell us about the image that you chose and kind of what it was portraying.
Yeah, I had an image on there earlier. It was of Euclid scolding a student for using ChatGPT to learn his proposition. So maybe for people in the audience who don't know, like, who Euclid is or what a proposition is, can you kind of help? Euclid is an ancient Greek philosopher and mathematician, and he created a book of mathematical propositions that go through just, simple things of like, what is a circle, what is a triangle, all the way to, more advanced things like the golden number and stuff like that. So it's a book that has mathematical equations and then how to solve them and how to get through them.
Good. So I have a quote from Euclid hanging in my classroom. You don't have to remember what it is, do you? I'll read it to you here in a second.
If you read to me, I'm sure I'll recognize it.
Sure. So he stands before a king, and the king's like, all right, listen, I hear geometry is kind of a big deal. I'm not really interested in putting the work in. Can you give me the ChatGPT version? Mm-hmm. And Euclid has the audacity to say, there is no royal road to geometry. So what do you think he means when he says that?
There's no easy way to it, I think. There's no way to understand the book just by, prompting into the ChatGPT and say, explain this to me real quick, and then just like read it and you're good. You have to actually, use Euclid's propositions, and then things like Clark University and stuff like that explain the proposition, but in, different ways and stuff like that. You have to go through it, memorize it, and genuinely understand what it's saying. And then after you do that, you can also find there's different ways to do propositions. You don't have to do it in one set way. You can figure out other ways to do it.
Okay, thanks.
All right. How you doing?
Good.
Good. All right. You asked me if I was going to ask you a bunch of scary questions.
Yeah.
I don't think my questions are scary, so
Okay.
I'm a little biased. Okay, so you mentioned 1984, and you put something in there along the lines of the human mind doesn't deal well with cognitive dissonance. What does that mean?
Cognitive dissonance, is that like fighting between two different ideas, or?
Yeah, right. So they had like the double speak that they were trying to use.
Yep.
So in that book, what were the people missing to be able to fight against that?
Well, they all grew up in a society where they were told not to think, and if they were given two contrary ideas, they were told that you can't really sort them out. You gotta just believe both at the same time, or they'll be killed. So they grew up with this idea that thinking is bad and thinking through things is not what you're supposed to do. You're just supposed to consume information and then just believe it. And I think that creates a mindset where you don't really know how to fight out two contrary ideas.
Okay. So does it matter if humans give up this capacity for rational thought?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay. So are we on that road? Is that a realistic scenario? Like, should I be worried about Big Brother, like, in the next 50 years?
I think the double think aspect of 1984 is a whole lot scarier than, the Big Brother aspect where, there's just cameras all around you looking at you. I think the idea of not being able to have a conversation and have a debate with people is scarier than, cameras all around you just constantly looking at you in every move that you do. I mean, because civil wars happen when people stop talking.
That's an interesting comment. Okay, so in that direction, it seems like the issue that you're poking at is what happens when we remove or replace thought and investigation. Mm-hmm. So what's the benefit to the human soul by working through thought and investigation?
Well, first off, God gave us a mind so we can think. He didn't just give us a mind so we can, consume information, forget it, and not understand any of it and how to, go through it. So I think that, he also gave us the Bible, obviously. And it's not like the Bible is necessarily the easiest thing to read, I don't think. You have to study it. You have to read through it. And I think that's for a reason. I don't think God didn't give us, the ChatGPT version of Genesis, where it's just, a summary, it's quick and it's easy to read. He gave us a long book that can be difficult to go through sometimes. I think that's a very big reason of why we need to understand how to think and go through things and process stuff like this.
Okay, so then on the flip side, what does a human soul lose when they are not able to think and investigate?
I think many things. One of the bigger ones is like, relationship. If you can't think through things or investigate things, it's difficult to have relations with people, I think, especially with God.
I like that. That's a deep thought. Okay. What's the source of wisdom for AI?
So things like ChatGPT, they have pretty much just articles and websites and all that stuff before 2022. So they limit the time that it gets all its articles. So you can't ask ChatGPT on like stuff that happened last week or even the year before, because it doesn't know that information yet. It just has access to articles and websites before 2022, and then it just compiles all that information and kind of has a catalog of those events and that stuff.
Okay, so can I summarize that into a big bucket of human knowledge?
Mm-hmm. At least what's on the internet.
What's on the internet? Good. I like that thought. Okay. So then, in a related but different direction, where did Socrates get his wisdom? Do you remember that? I can help you if you need help.
I need help.
Okay. Oracle at Delphi. Socrates, you're the wisest. And he's like, you're crazy. So he investigates. Mm-hmm. And then he figures out, I'm wise because I know how unwise I am. Mm-hmm. Okay, so next question. Where does the Bible get its wisdom?
Well, from God, ultimately, I think.
Okay, because that kind of points to some other ideas. If AI is pulling all of its knowledge from the internet, is it real wisdom?
Well, wisdom isn't necessarily knowledge. Wisdom's kind of the application of knowledge. And I mean, you can make the argument that it's not wisdom, it's just a bunch of knowledge, but I mean, then you could say the Bible is a bunch of knowledge and the application of its wisdom too. So.
Okay, good. No, I think those are great thoughts. I like that. So I want to go down this road. Does truth exist outside of the internet?
Yes.
Where does truth exist? Like its essence?
Everywhere, I would think.
Everywhere?
I mean, we know
So a rock is truth?
I mean, it's abiding to the laws of physics, which we know are true, so you could argue that it's
But where did that come from?
God.
Okay, like, it's a simple question, but I think so. Okay. Last thing I want to ask is, how should we use AI at MCA?
So I've thought about this a lot, and I briefly mentioned it in my speech, but I'm not 100% sure how that should look. I mean, I'm not a teacher. I don't understand, all of the things that would help a student, use it correctly. But I know that it's a heart issue, not necessarily you have to look at your heart and you have to want the will to learn things and to understand things and to know that it's actually better for you to go through this and not just use ChatGPT, make your oral real quick. So.
Okay. So if the heart's missed, then what would your advice be? If someone's like, what do you mean I'm getting great grades? What would you say to them?
I mean, obviously I feel bad for them because it's not going to help them in the long run. I think that it's difficult to teach somebody that doesn't want to help themselves. So I think you just need to assure, students and kids know that the importance of actually, learning and understanding things, which I think MCA does a great job at that. So I think the students here are pretty well off in that aspect.
Awesome. Thank you. I appreciate it.
I'm having a great time. This is a great topic. I'm gonna ask you one thing. I was just sitting there thinking. Sometimes you're talking about advice you give to MCA students. Let's talk about that for a second. If I put up a sign in my classroom about AI as a warning, what would that look like?
I don't know.
I like the Royal Road thing. I kind of figure, could we expand that to say, like, there's no royal road to knowledge or something like that?
I think that's a good thing, and I don't think that problems like this arise in just necessarily AI. I mean, there are places that you can go and just get somebody to write a paper for you, and it's not necessarily AI; it's somebody actually writing a paper. But I think that's probably a good statement. Is there's no royal road to
there's a benefit to going last. I think there's. Okay, so. You're talking about, and I have to say this because I had him in Greek, and Greek is one of those classes at MCA that everybody moans about, right? And why does everybody moan about Greek?
Because it's difficult, and a lot of them don't see the actual purpose and why it's beneficial.
Okay, and we talked a lot about this in Greek. Why is learning a language like Greek beneficial?
Because you can study the actual original version of the New Testament. I mean, you can English leaves out a whole lot more than a lot of people would actually think compared to the Greek. Like, Greek is so much more advanced in what it's saying, and it's so much more, I'd say, not easy to understand, but it gives you more information, it feels like.
Okay.
More descriptive.
So that's a very practical thing too. I think. Do you think there's benefits to learning a language just because it's a certain process to learning a language?
Yeah, I think that's good too.
Okay. So I have to ask. on a very practical level, we Google things all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Can you remember anything you Googled last week?
Probably not, no.
Okay, so what's the difference between quick access to information and real learning?
Well, quick access is obviously, like you said, a lot of people Google things or, ChatGPT things and they don't remember them immediately. But I'm sure there's probably a lot of my geometry students that have been working on their final last week. And I'm sure many of them actually do know what they are doing and can recall, the steps of their final and their propositions that they've been working on. And I think that's probably an example of that.
Okay, so basically, when used well, it can be beneficial, but when used poorly, it doesn't really benefit you, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So way back in the old days when you were in World History 1, we learned this thing that Rome tried and failed to be God. Are we playing God with AI?
I think in a lot of aspects, yes. I think in a lot of aspects, no. So one of the things I mentioned at the beginning of my speech was that there's 3 types of AI. One of them incorporates both intelligent and, and movement. This is stuff like, Terminator and things like that you hear. And I think that is trying to recreate a human with technology is definitely trying to play God. But there's not really any of those technologies that are that good yet. I mean, they all have to be plugged into a wall. They all don't work that well. They're getting better, but it's a slow process. And I think that it's obvious that people are trying to play God and they're failing, I think.
As one does when one tries to play God, right? Well, I asked Levi a little bit ago if he was into science fiction, and sadly he said not really. And there went my whole line of questioning. But you did mention Terminator, so I am a science fiction geek, and I want to read a quote to you, and I want, let's see if I can, I gotta find my quote here. Tamlin Hunt from the Scientific American magazine says this: any defenses or precautions we attempt to build into these AI gods on their way to godhood will be anticipated and neutralized with ease by the AI once it reaches superintelligence status. There's your Terminator. Is that, do you think, a real danger?
Right now, I don't think so. And we see a lot of precautions in the way of that happening, especially in ChatGPT. One of them is that they don't have information from after 2022, and that's kind of to avoid backlash from having modern tools and modern information about AI that it can use to do things.
Okay. Well, I'd like to don't want to be considered a boomer, but okay. I'm not a boomer. That happened one time during an oral. That's before. Let's talk a little bit. I'm a Star Trek fan, and there's this thing on Star Trek called the holodeck. When basically you can go in and you can create your own reality. You can program it in there, and you can live a false reality. We have some of that already in the form of virtual reality. Is there a danger when we get into virtual reality? Can we get into it too much? Can we try to replace actual reality with virtual reality? What are your thoughts on VR?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you can. I don't think it's a very big problem right now, just because it's not as advanced as people would want. It's not real life yet. You don't get, physical touch. You don't feel the wind in your face when you're using, stuff like that. But I think we've seen a lot of it, people finding their identity in devices and video games and things like, VR and stuff like that. And I don't think that's a good road to go down.
Yeah, it really, as Christians, we have a reality. And we know that there's truth, and we have to accept our reality. Do you think there's a danger in just choosing not to accept your reality? I'm going to make my reality something I want it to be. Does that ever happen?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it does. I think people put on a mask to kind of create a reality that they want. I think in 1984 we see that it's all formed on not reality in a way, and you can see how that goes, and it doesn't go very well, especially in that book.
Yes, and I think you just basically described any kind of social media like Instagram or whatever when you're putting a false reality out there. Very nice. Because we can, does that mean we should?
Absolutely not. No, I don't think so.
Very nice. Thank you. I'll pass it on.
Uh-oh.
You're just saying uh-oh because we're at the end and we're almost done.
Yeah.
I've talked to you about this for a long time. So, for boomers in the audience who haven't experienced ChatGPT very much and are maybe just trying to decide, like, okay, what do I do with all this information? Maybe I'll never use it, but my kids might. Like, what advice would you give them, me, to know how to help coach, like, my own family kind of as they're entering into kind of this brave new world?
Like I said, it's definitely, I don't think you need to just give them a whole bunch of how to use AI and why it's bad. I think you need to, look at their heart, try and train their heart, make them understand, the beauty and wonder. I think is a big thing, is just the want to learn, the want to know more things and understand things and understand how they work is a really, really big thing.
What kinds of things from your own childhood helped accomplish that in you? Because I do see that in you, is that you are curious about the world. You ask interesting questions. Like, what kinds of things happened to you that we might be able to transfer to other people?
I've had a lot of hobbies growing up that I've gone, to and from, just because I like learning new things. I don't know, sorry, what was the question? I forgot.
Just like you kind of have entered into adolescence with a lot of that still intact. So I just kind of want to know what worked for you that may be an encouragement to other families trying to figure out how to do that with their own kids.
That's difficult. I'm thinking. I'm definitely not a parent, so.
Leave that up to boomers to sort out.
Yeah. I think my parents have done a great job of bringing me out of the house a lot. They've taken me a lot of places, and I get to see a lot of different things, a lot of different things, a lot of different people, a lot of different cultures and stuff like that. I think just seeing what the world has to offer, especially if you learn and understand it and study it and that sort of stuff, I think that's a really big thing, is just showing them that.
Good. So you quoted one of my heroes, Einstein. It's kind of a long quote, so we don't have time to, I guess it's not that long. Do you have it in front of you?
Yep.
Would you mind reading it?
If a person masters the fundamentals of his subject and has learned to think and work independently, he will surely find his way, and besides will be able to adapt himself to progress and changes than the person whose training principally consists in acquiring the detailed knowledge.
So then at the end, you wrapped up with King Solomon, and he talked about kind of the purpose of writing Proverbs. I was just curious if you think that what Einstein's setting out here is the same kind of end goal as what King Solomon was setting out for people.
I think they're very similar. Einstein, in this quote, he let us know that we need to learn to think and work independently rather than just, consume information. And, King Solomon in Proverbs was trying to explain to us that we all need to gain wisdom and we all need to understand what's going on, no matter if you're young, smart, old, however it is. He says, let the wise listen and add to their learning. And I think that's a really big thing. I think it's definitely similar to what Einstein's saying.
Do you think independent thought was kind of what King Solomon was holding up as the highest good? Is if you leave the Proverbs knowing how to think for yourself, then you've accomplished the highest end?
I think that's I don't know if it's necessarily the biggest point of the Proverbs, but I think that's a really big aspect of it. Always trying to get through is get, knowledge and wisdom out to people for them to understand.
So, how do you work in that last sentence of the Proverbs? I would guess it's verse 7. We read that last verse. Kind of elaborate on that.
The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge, but fools despise wisdom and instruction.
Yeah, so how does that kind of fold into this stuff about kind of what Einstein's putting out there as the kind of the highest good of being able to think for yourself?
So fearing God is something we've talked about a good bit at MCA, and it's definitely a difficult sentence to understand. Like, what do they mean by fear and that sort of stuff? And I don't think we should be scared of, like, terrified of God necessarily. I think that it's, in a lot of ways, it means that we need to understand, or what's the word I'm thinking of?
You're doing great.
We need to make sure that we put ourselves below God a lot, and we need to put ourselves in a position where God is above us. I think that if we do that and we humble ourselves in front of God, we can gain knowledge a lot. If we ask Him to, help us and give us knowledge, it helps a ton.
Yeah, and I think, probably the classic illustration of people, there's lots in the scriptures of people trying to be like God and taking matters into their own hands is the Tower of Babel.
Yeah.
And, it never comes to a good end when people try to put themselves in the ultimate position of authority. And I do think that that's the key difference between what Einstein's talking about and what King Solomon is talking about, is that it's actually something that really simple people can do, is to just understand their position and understand that God is God and that I am not. And then AI can be a really useful tool for people like that.
No, and that's why I really liked this verse, is because it kind of encapsulates everybody into it. It's the young, it's the wise, it's the old, it's the smart, it's everybody, and then it tells them that no matter what, as long as you fear God and put yourself in a place of humbleness, you're going to learn and you're going to gain in knowledge and wisdom. But at the end, it's pretty simple. It says, "But fools despise wisdom and instruction." So if you don't humble yourself and you don't humble yourself before God, you're not going to gain wisdom and instruction.
That message applies to Gen Alphas and Boomers. All right, well, we've reached the end, so I'm actually pretty nervous about what you might want to ask us. But do your worst.
It's pretty easy. It's lighthearted. I won't be mean to y'all, but if you could create an AI device to do anything for you, what would it be? It can be stuff like ChatGPT, it could be stuff like Terminator, it could be anything.
Who's going to admit out loud they want to make Terminator?
I don't know, she likes the sci-fi stuff.
That's true. Man. Well, I love to travel, and it would be cool to have like an AI travel planner, but I actually really like the planning too. I was thinking about some of what you were talking about, just your experience writing your paper. If you just kind of load up some prompts into ChatGPT, you lose this like sense of accomplishment. Like, I kind of had to wrestle with that and make these decisions about okay, how much time should I spend there and how much time should I spend over here instead. And there's just something that's really satisfying about that completion and the struggle. And so I don't think I would want to give that up. But since sci-fi is on the table, I don't know if summoning the dead is something you should talk about. But if there's an AI that I could have let me like chat with, Euclid and chat with Einstein and just ask them questions, like that would be really awesome.
Yeah.
So the necromancer, I don't know what. I don't know what sci-fi character that is.
Oh no.
I think I'm kind of leaning towards the start of Mr. Pre's answer. Like I keep thinking, we're surrounded by all these books in this room, and they don't get used a lot, and that's because we have the internet. And soon, like we're not going to be using the internet very much because we're just going to go use ChatGPT. And so there's just this. It feels like relentless progress. I don't think that's entirely true, but I don't know. The older I get, the more I appreciate doing it myself. And that sounds really idealistic. I mean, if there was something that would clean up my house, like, man, I'll take that in a heartbeat. So some of the, what do I want to say? Like, I want to displace some of the mundane maintenance tasks. Except then Mr. Prius comment comes back to me. Like, I like the planet. Well, what am I growing on the inside if I do the maintenance tasks? And so your answer has me running in circles. Really. Like, as much as this sounds lovely and idealistic, I think it also defeats many of the good things in my life. So I think that's my answer, which is very much a non-answer.
No, it's a good answer, I think.
So I choose not AI.
I have to agree. The first thing that came to mind was like the AI Dino house cleaner thing, but I've seen too many science fiction movies to know that can go horribly wrong. iRobot comes to mind, and some of the other ones. But truly, if I could do anything with AI, the Star Trek fan comes out, because I would feel like I would take an Alzheimer's and dementia village and I would turn it into an artificially generated beautiful space. So that people, even though they're suffering through these things, could think that they're somewhere else that they would want to be. That's what I would do.
That's great.
Well, thank you, Levi. It was awesome. I have 4 pages of notes. But thank you for your heart. Thank you for approaching a topic it's difficult, and it's applicable to us, and it works with our integrity, and I really appreciate that. So let's pray for Levi here real quick. Oh, Heavenly King, we come to you today, and we are so grateful for Levi and these seniors. We are so grateful for the opportunity to come together and hear what they have to say, and to share some good conversation, and most of all, to be in fellowship with our MCA family, and to let these seniors know that they are so loved that we're willing to sit here and listen to them and let them share their hearts. We pray for Levi as he goes forward to college and enters life, that you would be with him in every way. In your name, amen.
Thank you. Thanks. Ah.